Om Vishwandarpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyanyajantargatam Pashyannatmani Mayaya Bahirvodbhutai Yatha Nidraya Yasakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanamevadvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Nama Idam Shri Dakshinamurtaye नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठं अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्री परमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ वासुदेवेन्द्रयोगीन्द्रं नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुं मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते. I welcome you all to the 50th class of the Fundamentals of Vedanta series. Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mityeti. The Tattvabodha gave out the essence of Vedanta, that you are the Satyam, you belong to a higher order of reality, and everything else is in a lower order of reality. And we said that a clear understanding of this itself is moksha, because the fundamental Satyam Mithya principle is that Satyam is fundamentally unaffected by the coming and going of Mithya, by changing Mithya. So Vedanta is not saying that you have to become this Satyam. Vedanta is saying you are this Satyam. And that is why we say, Jnanat eva kaivalyam, that knowledge alone liberates. I have to see what the vastavam is, what the reality is. And when I see what the reality is, in that reality lies my liberation. And therefore, I have to come to this understanding. I have to understand that I am this Satyam and all else is Mithya. Now, how does Vedanta teach this? We took the example of the jeweler teaching his son about how there is only the gold. The gold was not in the vision of the jeweler's son at all. He was seeing only the ornaments. And therefore, gold had to be first introduced in his vision. So the first step he taught him was that gold is not the necklace, gold is not the bangle, gold is not the ring. Gold is none of these ornaments. It is the shiny, yellow, smooth metal underlying all of these ornaments. So then he was able to appreciate that yes, this gold is there, these ornaments are there. But he was still in Dvaitam. The next step is to show that the gold is the cause, the ornaments are the effect. Karana Karya Prakriya. And then comes the crucial third step where he's shown that there are no ornaments separately existing from the gold. In fact, gold alone really exists. This is Advaita, the one and only non-dual reality. There is no second thing other than the gold. So the parallel in Vedanta is that the ignorant Jiva is seeing only this plurality. He is seeing only this world, this body and the mind, etc. The Atma is not there in his vision at all. So Atma is first brought into his vision. He is taught स्थूल सूक्ष्म कारण शरीराद व्यतिरिक्तः पंचकोशातीतः सन् अवस्थात्रय साक्षी सच्चिदानंद स्वरूप संन्यस्तिष्ठति स आत्मा. That there is this Atma Tattvam, which is not this Shariratrayam, not this Kosha Panchakam, not this Avasthatrayam. So then he is able to appreciate, oh, now there is this Atma and then there is Anatma. But this is still in Dvaitam. And as we said, many philosophies stop here. Many ways, many systems, many of these darshanas, other than Advaita Vedanta, they stop here. Sankhya and Yoga, for example, they understand there is consciousness and matter, but then their liberation lies in somehow experiencing this pure consciousness other than matter because it is Dvaitam. Both are in the same order of reality. As we said, the ornaments have to be melted in order to see the gold. That is their way of thinking. Then Vedanta goes further. It says non-duality is not absence of duality. Non-duality is in spite of duality. So one can very well look at the pot and dismiss the pot, saying that there is only the clay. One can look at the ornaments and dismiss the ornaments, saying there is only the gold. Similarly, one can look at this world and dismiss this world, saying that there is only the Atma. One has to come to this point, and therefore comes the second step, the Karana Karya Prakriya, where Vedanta teaches that Atma is the Karana, this entire Anatma, this Jagat is the Karya. Karana Karya Prakriya. Atma is the cause, everything else is an effect. And then comes the third step where Vedanta teaches that there is no world separately existing from the Atma. Because the Karya cannot exist separately from the Karana. And therefore, there is no world separately existing from you. In fact, you alone exist here. This is the crucial third step. This is how one comes to this Ekam Eva Advitiya. Ekam Eva Advitiya Atma. The one and the only Atma. But how does one come to this vision? So for this, Tattvabodha embarked on the Srishti Prakriya. And as we said, Srishti Prakriya is a part of this Mahavakya Vichara only, where the Jivatma and the Paramatma are equated. Tat Tvam Asi. So we have already analyzed the meaning of the Tvam Pada. With Atma Kaha, this individual was analyzed. And we came to the understanding that the Atma behind this body-mind complex is this reality of this individual. But then one has to do this Tattva Vichara also, this Vichara into the Samashti, into the totality. And that is what Tattvabodha started with Atha Chaturvimshati Tattvotpatti Prakaram Vakshyamaha. Jagatutpatti Prakaram Vakshyamaha, Prapanchotpatti Prakaram Vakshyamaha. So how did Tattvabodha present this? Brahmashreya Sattva Rajas Tamo Gunatmika Maya Asti. That before this creation came into being, as we would say, before the ornaments came into being, there was only the gold. Similarly, before this entire creation came into being, there was only Brahman and Maya. As we said, Brahman, the word means big. And when big comes by itself, it means unqualified big or limitlessly big. But Brahman has got no limitations of space, time, or object. Desha parichinnatvam is not there, Kala parichinnatvam is not there, Vastu parichinnatvam is not there. Brahman being all-pervading, there is no space where Brahman is not. Therefore, Brahman is not limited by space. Brahman being Kalatrayepi tishtati, being eternal. Present in all the three periods of time, past, present, and future. There is no time when Brahman is not there. And no object can limit Brahman, just as whether it be the necklace, the bangle, or the ring, none of them can limit the gold, because wherever the necklace is, the gold is. Wherever the bangle is, the gold is. Similarly, wherever any object is, Brahman is there, being the very Satyam behind the object. And as we said, that Brahman is just another name for Atma, the reality behind the individual. In fact, the Upanishads use the terms interchangeably. As we said, Atma is also Satsvarupa, Kalatrayepi tishtati. So the same Atma that is behind the individual was present at the beginning of the creation also. But as we said, that this Brahman is Drik Swarupam. It is of the nature of consciousness. And therefore it is never the Drishyam. And all attributes belong only to the Drishyam, never to the Drik. And therefore Brahman is attributeless. And being attributeless, it is changeless, because all change can only belong to that which is attributed. So Brahman is this changeless, attributeless consciousness. And this changeless, attributeless consciousness, being changeless, cannot totally explain the emergence of this world. Therefore, we bring in the other factor, the second factor known as Maya, which is the unmanifest world. Just as the tree is unmanifest in the seed, the entire movie is unmanifest in the DVD. Just as the entire dream world is unmanifest in the waker. Similarly, this entire world that is about to emerge is unmanifest in Maya. Maya is the unmanifest world. Manifest Maya is called the world. So Brahmashraya Maya, a very important information Vedanta gives me. That this Maya is Brahmashraya, meaning Maya doesn't have its own existence. It depends on Brahman for its existence. And therefore Maya is Mithya. Brahman is Satyam. And we saw an important rule saying Karana Gunaha Karye Anuvartante. The attributes of the cause carry on to the effect. Just as the attributes of the parents are present in the children. The color of the hair, the color of the eyes, the color of the skin, etc., carry over from the parents to the children. This is a very important law in Vedanta. कारण गुणाः कार्ये कार्येषु अनुवर्तन्ते और कार्ये अनुवर्तन्ते. So Maya is mithya. That's the fundamental character of Maya, and therefore the world that is an evolute of Maya also carries over the mithyatvam. The world is also dependent on Brahman for its existence. So this is the first adjective that Tattvabodha used, Brahmashraya Maya. The second is Sattva Rajas Tamo Gunatmika Maya. So here we use the karana gunaha karye anuvartante in the opposite direction. Like we said, on seeing the children, we can imagine what their parents look like. Similarly, on seeing certain things in the world, we can postulate what the cause must be like. Really speaking, this is not a postulation, it is the Shabda Pramana of Vedanta. But we can say that we can defend that, what Vedanta is saying, with this logic, saying that we are using Karana Gunaha, Karya Anuvartante in the opposite direction. So the world has got these three types of attributes that we notice: the power to know, the power to act, and the power to rest. In sentient beings, we can see the power to know and the power to act. And when they are tired, they go to rest. Deep sleep is there. And in the entire inert world, we see the power to rest, because all of these inert objects, they are always resting. There is no power to know or act there. So, if this world has this character of having this power to know, act, and rest, then the cause too must have those same things in an unmanifest form. And that is what we call the sattva, rajas, and tamoguna. Sattva, rajas, tamogunatmika maya asti. From sattva emerges the power to know, from rajas emerges the power to act, and from tamas emerges this dravya shakti, or this inertia, the power to rest. So now, the second part of this we saw was that there are two causes now, Brahman and Maya. And Brahman, being changeless, is the changeless material cause. Vivarta Upadana Karanam. Maya is the changing material cause. Parinami Upadana Karanam. We saw the examples of this. What is the example of Vivarta Upadana Karanam? Where the rope appears as a snake, it doesn't transform. It appears as a snake without transformation. There is no change in the rope, but it still is a cause behind the snake. Because the length of the snake is the length of the rope. The thickness of the snake is the thickness of the rope. That is the Vivarta Upadana Karanam. And then Parinami Upadana Karanam is one that changes into something else. So Maya changes into this world. Just like milk changes into curd. That's the example of Parinami Upadana Karanam. Now the question is, what was the situation like before this creation emerged? And we said we experience that every day in the form of our own deep sleep. In deep sleep, nothing is there. The experience of nothing is there. But does that mean nothing is there? We say no. The experiencer consciousness is very much there as the experiencer of nothingness. So similarly, even at the beginning of creation, everything was unmanifest, but Brahman was there as the consciousness. And we talked about the second factor, Maya, being there, which explains the emergence of the world. Just as this dream world emerges from this individual who's sleeping, the dream world is there in an unmanifest form. That unmanifest dream world becomes manifest. And if we are to ask why the dream world emerges, we say it is the pressure of the vasanas, past impressions that are there in the individual's mind that erupt in the form of this dream world. So here, in case of Brahman and Maya, we talk about the fructifying karma of all these jivas that require the emergence of the world so that their punyas and papas can be given the experiences of the sukha and dukkha. They have to have these experiences in order to exhaust the punya and papa. And how do they get these experiences? Only if the jivas get their sukshma and sthula shariras, and only if there's a world that the sukshma and sthula sharira can interact with. Therefore, there is this emergence of the world due to karma. And we talked about this evolution of the world in 4 stages. The emergence of the Sukshma Bhutas, Sukshma Bhuta Srishtihi, Sukshma Bhautika Srishtihi, Sthula Bhuta Srishtihi, and Sthula Bhautika Srishtihi. So in Sukshma Bhuta Srishtihi, we talked about the emergence of the subtle 5 elements from Brahman backed by Maya. ततः आकाश संभूतः आकाशाद् वायुः वायोः वायुः वायोः तेजः तेजस आपः अद्भ्यः पृथ्वी. From the subtlest element to the grossest element, Akasha first emerges, space emerges, along with space, time also emerges. And space has got only this one attribute of Shabdaha. It is the subtlest of the 5 elements. And then from Akasha emerges Vayuhu. Here too Karana Gunaha Karye Anuvartante. If Akasha is the Karana for Vayuhu, then the attributes of Akasha in here, in Vayuhu also has this attribute of Shabdaha, but it adds the additional attribute of Sparshaha. And then from Vayuhu comes Agnihi, and Agnihi carries over the 2 attributes of Vayuhu. Shabdaha and Sparshaha has its own attribute of Rupaha. And then from Agnihi, subtle Agnihi, emerges this subtle Jalam, which carries over the 3 attributes of Agnihi, Shabdaha, Sparshaha, and Rupaha, and has its own attribute of Rasaha. And then from this subtle Jalam emerges the subtle Prithvi element, which carries over the 4 attributes of Shabdaha, Sparshaha, Rupaha, and Rasaha from Jalam, and then has its own unique attribute of Gandhaha. So this is the Sukshma Bhuta Shrishtihi. And then the next step is the Sukshma Bhautika Shrishtihi that emerges, that explains the emergence of all the Sukshma Shariras from the Sukshma Bhutas. And therefore we said that from the Sattva Amsha of these 5 elements emerges these Jnanendriyas. Karanagunaha Karye Anuvartante, since Akasha, Vayuhu, Agnihi, Jalam and Prithvi are all effects of Maya, they are also Sattva, Rajas, Tamo Gunatmika. They also have Sattva Amsha, Rajas Amsha, Tamasik Amsha. Therefore, from the sattva aspect of each of these 5 elements emerges the Jnanendriyas. And each Jnanendriya that emerges from a particular element has the ability to grasp the unique attribute of that particular element. And from the Samashti sattva of all these Sukshma Bhutas emerge the Mano, Buddhi, Chittam and Ahankara, the Antahkarana. Then from the Rajas aspect of all of these Panchabhutas emerges the Pancha Karmendriyani. And from the Samashti Rajas aspect of all of these subtle Panchabhutas emerges the Pancha Pranaha. Pancha Jnanendriyani, Pancha Karmendriyani, Pancha Pranadeha, Manaschaikam Buddhischaika, Sukshma Shariram definition. Here just added 2 more functions of the Sukshma Shariram in terms of Chittam and Ahankara. So this explains the emergence of the Sukshma Sharira, the Sukshma Bhautika Prapancha. And then we talked about the emergence of the Sthula Bhutas, the grossified 5 elements from the subtle 5 elements, through this process known as Panchikaranam, where each element first divides into 2. Akasha, for example, divides into 2. 1/2 of Akasha remains intact, and then it combines with 1/8 of Vayuhu, 1/8 of Agnihi, 1/8 of Jalam, and 1/8 of Prithvi. half of Akasha plus 4 times 1/8. 4 times 1/8 is 1/2, and there is half of Akasha that combines together to give the grossified Akasha. So each of these Panchikrita Panchamahabhutani are mixtures. And this grossified Panchabhuta is the only thing that we can perceive. We cannot perceive the subtle element at all. That's why Sukshma Sharira is Sukshma and Sthula Sharira is Sthula. So this is how the Panchikrita Panchamahabhutas, the Sthula Bhutas emerge. And now there is the Sthula Bhautika Shrishtihi, where then the Sthula Shariras are created from the Sthula Panchamahabhutas, and the 14 Lokas also emerge from the Sthula Panchabhutas. So these are the 4 stages of this emergence of the world. As we discussed, why is Tattva Bodha talking about this in detail? We said that there is emergence from Karana to Sukshma to Sthula, both at the individual level as well as the total level. At the individual level, there is the Karana Shariram, from which emerges the Sukshma Shariram, and finally the Sukshma Shariram associated with the Sthula Shariram. Similarly, there is the Karana Prapancha, which is the Maya, which is the primordial unmanifest matter. And from this emerges this Sukshma Prapancha. And from the Sukshma Prapancha emerges the Sthula Prapancha. So there is a certain equivalence. And therefore it says, Evam Pinda Brahmandayor Aikyam Sambhutam. Evam Pinda Brahmandayor Aikyam Sambhutam. Therefore, there is a certain equivalence in the way the Pindanda evolves and the Brahmanda evolves. The Pindanda refers to this individual, and the Brahmanda refers to the cosmos. There is a similarity of the raw materials. If we take the pairs, there is the Karana Sharira and Karana Prapancha. Both of them are really primordial, unmanifest matter. And then the next stage is the Sukshma Sharira and the Sukshma Prapancha. Both of them are Sukshma Bhuta. Their fundamental raw materials are made of Sukshma Panchabhutas. And then is the Sthula Shariram and the Sthula Prapancha. The raw materials are the Sthula Panchabhutas. The important thing to note is that in all of these 3 pairs, everything is inert. There is no inherent consciousness in anything. So this is backed by Brahman. As we said, Maya evolves into this world. Brahman is there, providing existence and consciousness. So just as from cotton, these Sukshma cotton fibers emerge, and these cotton fibers then become yarn. And then the yarn becomes fabric, and the fabric gets converted into a variety of dresses. So there are a variety of all of these things that emerge, but the reality of it is all cotton only. There is just the cotton all the way. Everything else is just Namarupa. Cotton eva satyam tadanyat sarvam mithyati. So here too, there is Brahman that is backed by Maya. And Maya evolves into all of these Namarupas. From Brahman, backed by Maya, emerges Akashaha, from Akasha Vayuhu, from Vayuhu Agnihi, from Agnihi Jalam, from Jalam Prithvi. Sukshma Bhutas have emerged, and then from this Sukshma Shariras emerge, and from the Sukshma Bhutas, Sthula Bhutas emerge through Panchikaranam, and from the Sthula Bhutas, the Sthula Shariras, and the Sthula Prapancha, everything emerges. But what is the reality of all this? It is Brahman all the way. So the important lesson to take home from this is Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. That Brahman is the Satyam and everything else is Mithya, everything else is name and form only. So this is an important part of the message of Vedanta. Like we saw Bhagavad-pada's essence of Vedanta in one shloka. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Na Paraha. So this Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya is a fundamental message, a pillar of the Vedantic teaching. But then this second part is also there, Jivo Brahmaiva Na Paraha. Now we have to equate this Jiva to this Brahman. Because only when I understand Aham Brahmasmi, I am this Brahman from which the entire Jagat has emerged. That is when I can come to Aham Satyam Jagat Mithya, Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. So I have to come to this point now. Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. How does Vedanta teach this? Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. Meaning Jiva is non-separate from Brahman. So this is the portion that we are going to enter into now. The Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Vichara or the Mahavakya Vichara. In fact, this is the central theme of Vedanta. This is the message. This is the final message of Vedanta, and this can come only through the Shabda Pramana of Vedanta, Tat Tvam Asi, the Mahavakya. There is no other Pramana in this world that can lead me to this knowledge. That is why we had such a deep dive into the discussion about Pramanas. To understand that there are certain types of knowledge that can be only gathered through the Shabda Pramana. So this is the Shabda Pramana of Vedanta. Tat Tvam Asi, that you, this Jiva, is identical. There is an identity between you and Ishvara. The micro and the macro, the Vyashti and the Samashti, the individual and the total, there is an essential oneness that one has to understand. And in that lies my liberation. In that lies my moksha, in that understanding. And that is why this discussion is extremely, extremely important. So now we enter this part of Tattvabodha and we will read this portion. This is on the last page of the PDF document. स्थूल शरीराभिमानी जीवनामकं ब्रह्म प्रतिबिंबं भवति
स्थूल शरीर अभिमानी जीवनामकं ब्रह्म प्रतिबिंबं भवति
स एव जीवः प्रकृत्या स्वस्माद् ईश्वरं भिन्नत्वेन जानाति
प्रकृत्या स्वस्मादीश्वरं भिन्नत्वेन जानाति
अविद्योपाधिः सन् आत्मा जीव इत्युच्यते
आत्मा जीव इति उच्यते
मायोपाधिः सन् ईश्वर इत्युच्यते
ईश्वर इत्युच्यते
एवं उपाधिभेदात् जीवेश्वर भेद दृष्टिः यावत् पर्यन्तं तिष्ठति
जीवेश्वर भेद दृष्टि यावत् पर्यन्तं तिष्ठति
तावत् पर्यन्तं जन्म मरणादि रूप संसारो न निवर्तते
तावत् पर्यन्तं जन्म मरणादि रूप संसारो न निवर्तते
तस्मात् कारणात्
तस्मात् कारणात्
न जीवेश्वरयोर्भेदबुद्धिः स्वीकार्या
न जीवेश्वरयोर्भेदबुद्धिः स्वीकार्या.
So the interesting thing is in Tattva Bodha, we have so far not defined what the Jiva is and who Ishvara is. The word Jiva and Ishvara have not yet been defined. So this is the place where they are defined. And in general, we understand that Jiva means all these living beings. And Ishvara is generally translated as God. Now, God, the word God means a lot of different things to different people. It's an overloaded term and it generally brings in a lot of past baggage also associated with the term God. Therefore, in Vedanta, we generally stick to the term Ishvaraha. In Tattvabodha itself will talk about Ishvaraha. So we will use the terms Jivaha and Ishvaraha. So now let us go back to the situation before the creation, as we said. In fact, generally we don't even use the word creation because once we understand that Maya is unmanifest, is the unmanifest world, it's better to use the word manifestation rather than creation because nothing new is created. Whatever was unmanifest is becoming manifest. That is what is called creation. So we see that Maya goes through these stages of evolution from the Karana Prapancha to the Sukshma Prapancha to the Sthula Prapancha. Karana Shariram to Sukshma Shariram to Sthula Shariram. But then what was happening with Brahman? As we said, Brahman is the changeless, attributeless, changeless consciousness. Brahman doesn't undergo any change at all in this entire process. Just as the rope remains unchanged even when the snake is projected. So Brahman is there serving a very important function, if we can call it a function, which is lending existence. Because Brahman is the only one that possesses this existence. There is nothing else with existence. Just as the bangle has no existence of its own, it is the gold that lends the existence. Similarly, Brahman lends existence to the entire creation, the entire manifestation. So now, once this Shariratrayam and the Prapanchatrayam comes about, then Brahman does another thing, which is lend consciousness. Because Brahman is the only one whose nature is consciousness. Therefore, lender of existence and lender of consciousness. And that is why here he uses the term Jiva Namakam Brahma Pratibhimbam Bhavati. Brahma Pratibhimbam Bhavati. The Jiva is Brahma Pratibhimba, he says. You have to understand what this means. So if we go back to our favorite example of the moon. The moon is fundamentally non-luminous. But when the sunlight pervades the moon, then the moon becomes the shiny and luminous. The non-luminous moon becomes shiny and luminous. In fact, it is also capable of illuminating the earth with its light. So we give the light on the moon a new name. We call the light on the moon moonlight, even though it's really sunlight. The light on the moon is not of the moon, really speaking. The light on the moon is really speaking sunlight only, but we give it a new name called moonlight for the sake of transactions. It's easier to say moonlight than say reflected sunlight or something like that. But in reality, this moonlight that is on the moon is not of the moon. It is really belongs to the sun. It is really Surya Pratibimba. It's a reflection of the sunlight on the moon. So similarly, the Shariratrayam has got no inherent consciousness of its own. Being inert, it's material as we have seen. But then when this all-pervading Brahman is present, the entire evolution of Maya into Shariratrayam or these Karana Sharira into Shariratrayam, it happens in the presence of Brahman. Therefore, Brahman naturally pervades this Shariratrayam also. So when due to the pervasion of Brahman, due to Brahman pervading the Shariratrayam, there is a Brahma Pratibimbam that is found in the Shariratrayam. Really speaking, it is Brahman only, just like this moonlight is really speaking sunlight only. This consciousness is Brahman only. It is the original consciousness only. But then, in the context of it pervading the Shariratrayam, manifesting in the Shariratrayam, or we can use the term reflecting in the Shariratrayam, we call it Brahma Pratibimba. And this is given a name called Jiva. This matter becomes, this insentient matter becomes sentient. The sentiency is borrowed sentiency. It is really borrowed from Brahman, just like the moonlight is borrowed light. Moon becomes luminous, this insentient matter becomes sentient. Due to the presence of this consciousness, that is borrowed consciousness, it is reflected consciousness, Brahma Pratibimba, which is not other than the original consciousness. It is not something new. It is that same original consciousness that appears in matter. And in the context of it appearing in the matter, it is called Brahma Pratibimba, or given a new name called Jiva. So with this matter begins to say, I am. Because it recognizes the presence of the sentiency. That is what is called I am. And then it can also, just like this moonlight can illumine the earth, similarly, this reflected consciousness, borrowed consciousness that is present in matter, can now illuminate some things in the world. And that is how this Jiva then says, I know this pot, I know this cot, I know this mat, I know this cloth. So then it gets this capability to know a few other things in the world. This borrowed consciousness. So what this Jiva knows about keeps changing. Like we said, pot, cot, mat, cloth, etc. But the fact that this Jiva is sentient is constant. I am is constant. What this I am knows keeps changing. So this sentiency factor, this borrowed consciousness that develops in the Shariratrayam is what we call the Jiva. Brahma Pratibimba. And similarly, if we take the Prapanchatrayam, that is this entire material cosmos that emerges out of Maya. Now that is material, it doesn't have any inherent consciousness of its own, but Brahman, being all-pervading, helplessly pervades that also. There is nothing that Brahman doesn't pervade. So this all-pervading consciousness, Brahman, pervades this Prapanchatrayam also. And similarly, there is this borrowed consciousness in the Prapanchatrayam also. And then this Prapanchatrayam begins to behave like a huge organism. Just like this body, the various body parts are pervaded by consciousness. Therefore, this body part, this entire body behaves like one organism. And there is all this design included here for the preservation of health. If something enters the nose, the body sneezes, the nose sneezes. If something enters the eyes, there are tears that come out to expel whatever foreign has entered. If something enters the bloodstream, then the immune system kicks in. The entire effort is to preserve harmony of the body. There's intelligence that pervades this body in the form of this consciousness that pervades the body, and that is intelligence that tries to maintain health within the body, because health is the harmony of the body. So similarly, in this entire Prapanchatrayam, there is the Brahman that pervades the entire Prapanchatrayam. And there is this Brahma Pratibimba. Therefore, the entire Prapanchatrayam behaves like an intelligent organism. So there are self-defenses built into it for the preservation of the harmony of this whole. And the harmony is called Dharma. Whenever there is some threat to Dharma, then the entire organism retaliates. यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानम धर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम् परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे. So this entire conscious being is there behind the Prapanchatrayam also. And this is also a Brahma Pratibimba that we call Ishvara. Jiva is the Brahma Pratibimba in the Shariratrayam. Ishvara is the Brahma Pratibimba in the Prapanchatrayam. So now, if we go back to our moon example, then the moon, we say, has got this moonlight. But if we remove the moon, the same moonlight is nothing but the sunlight. The sunlight is not affected by the presence or absence of the moon. It just happens to be reflected, manifested in the presence of the moon. Similarly, Ishvara is the consciousness that pervades this cosmos. You remove the cosmos, that same consciousness that pervades the cosmos is nothing but Brahman. Jivaha is this consciousness pervading the Shariratrayam. You remove the Shariratrayam, then the same consciousness is nothing but Brahman. So one all-pervading consciousness pervades both the micro Jivatma as well as the macro Paramatma. Now there are three things, if we go back to our moon example, for the moon to become luminous, there are three things involved. One is the reflected sunlight, which is called moonlight. The second is the reflecting medium, which is the moon itself. And the third is the original sunlight, without which there can be no moonlight. So this, in short, we call this reflecting medium as RM. And we can call the original sunlight as OS. And then there is a reflected sunlight RS, which is the moonlight. So there is the RS, which is the reflected sunlight, which is the moonlight. And then there's the RM, the reflecting medium, which is the moon. And then there is this OS, which is the original sunlight. So similarly here, when we come to this insentient matter becoming sentient, there are three things involved. One is this Brahma Pratibimbam, or this reflected consciousness, this borrowed consciousness, manifested consciousness in matter, that we call as RC, reflected consciousness. And then there is the matter itself, in which the consciousness gets borrowed which the consciousness pervades, in which the consciousness is reflected, that we call as the reflecting medium, which is the RM. And then without the original consciousness, there is none of this reflected consciousness that can come in. So there is the original consciousness, the OC. So we use three terms: the original consciousness, OC, the reflecting medium, the RM, and the reflected consciousness, the RC. So Jiva is this Brahma Pratibhimbam, which is this RC, backed by the reflecting medium of Shariratrayam, and which has this backing of the original consciousness also. And Ishvaraha is this RC, reflected consciousness in the Prapanchatrayam, which is the reflecting medium RM, and it is backed by the original consciousness, the OC. So in Jivatma, in this Jiva, we have the RC, RM, OC. In Ishvara also, we have the RC, RM, and OC. So now, what are the differences between this reflected consciousness and the original consciousness? There are several differences. The first is that the reflected consciousnesses are many, aneka, but the original consciousness is one. Because the reflected consciousness will be there wherever there is a reflecting medium. So the entire jiva, the jiva has each jiva has got its own reflected consciousness. Ishvara has got this total reflected consciousness. Second is that this RC is located. It spans, because it is based on the RM, its span is only as much as the RM is. Based on the reflecting media, that size of the reflecting media determines the size of this RC. So we can talk about the size of this RC or the location of the RC. Whereas this OC is not located, it is all pervading. Similarly, these RCs, they can come and go because the reflecting media can come and go. This Sthula Sharira is there. This Sthula Sharira has got sentiency. The sentiency in the Sthula Sharira goes when the body dies. The reflected consciousness in this Sthula Sharira goes when this body dies. And similarly, when a new Sthula Sharira is formed, there is a new reflected consciousness there. But the original consciousness never comes and goes. The fourth is that the reflected consciousness can travel to other lokas because it is located. When the Sukshma Sharira departs this Sthula Sharira at the time of death, the Sukshma Sharira carries its reflection of consciousness, carries the RC and travels to other lokas. Whereas the original consciousness, which is Atma or Brahman, never travels. So why doesn't it ever travel? Because there is nowhere it is not for it to travel. One can travel from location A to location B only if one is not in location B. But the original consciousness is all pervading. Being all pervading, there is no question of travel. So there is colloquial language, there is a lot of misconception that Atma travels. Atma goes to other lokas, etc. But once one studies Vedanta, one understands that other Atma, Brahman, they are all pervading. Being all pervading, they don't travel. Really, what travels after death is the Sukshma Sharira. Similarly, there is this misunderstanding that Atma has left the body after death. People talk about this. But Atma, being all pervading, cannot leave anything. The all pervading consciousness is there in the dead body also. What has departed is the Sukshma Sharira, because of which this dead body, this body was actually borrowing consciousness from the Sukshma Sharira. which borrows consciousness from Atma. But when the Sukshma Sharira departs, there is nothing to lend consciousness to the Sthula Sharira. Therefore, the Sthula Sharira's RC goes. And then this reflected consciousness can have gradations, and it depends on the reflecting media. For example, even during the day, one may feel drowsy, etc. When one feels drowsy, then this reflected consciousness, it becomes duller. And when one goes to sleep, then one doesn't feel the reflected consciousness in the sthula and sukshma sharira at all. Or in coma, in a state of coma, for example, you slap this person, you hit this person, no response, because this reflected consciousness is in a very, very rudimentary state in the body. It is not able to respond at all. And similarly, if we take animals, then in animals, this self-awareness is lesser than the humans. Or in plants, it is even lesser. So all of these are varying degrees of reflected consciousness. But this original consciousness, it has got no degrees, no variations. It just pervades uniformly, and there is no place where it doesn't pervade, and wherever it pervades, there is uniform degree of consciousness. We cannot even talk about a degree of the original consciousness. The original consciousness is there, all pervading. Then the next point is that this reflected consciousness, they can become distorted, because Maya sattva rajas tamo gunatmika. There can be varying degrees of sattva, rajas, and tamas in the reflecting media, and based on that, there can be varying degrees of distortion also. But there is no distortion in the original consciousness because it is nirguna. And then the last, but the most important point is that this reflected consciousness is mithya. The original consciousness alone is Satyam. Both this reflected consciousness and the reflecting media, both are Mithya, because they are products of Maya. So these are the differences between the reflected and the original consciousness. So the nature of the reflection depends on the reflecting media. For example, the reflection may be small or large. It depends on the size of the reflecting media. The reflection may be clear or dirty. Like the sun may be reflected in a dirty pond. The sun may be reflected in a clear pool of water. There's a difference in the reflection. So now, this Jivatma is a reflection of this consciousness in the Shariratrayam. And naturally, it pervades only as much as the Shariratrayam. That is why I have this understanding that I am limited to this body. It's really a misunderstanding. We'll come to that. But the understanding of an ignorant person is that I stretch up to the boundaries of this body. So that is really the reflected consciousness talking about itself. Now, this reflected consciousness in the jiva, it is alpagnya, meaning that it has got little knowledge. The jiva may be a pot maker, ghatagnya. If he is a ghatakarta, he is a ghatagnya. If he is a pot maker, he knows something about pots. But he is not a patagnya, he is not a weaver who knows how to weave. The weaver is a patakkarta, he is a patagnya. But he doesn't know about ghata, so he is not a ghatagnya. So the knowledge that one possesses is limited. The skill that one possesses is also limited. For example, just as we saw, this ghatagnya may not know how to weave. This patagnya doesn't know how to make a pot. And sometimes one has the knowledge, but one borrows the skill. For example, there's an architect who has a knowledge to construct a building, but then he borrows the skill of construction from the mason. The mason has the skill of construction, but he doesn't have the knowledge to construct based the architect's knowledge, so he borrows his knowledge from the architect. So there is alpagyatvam and alpashaktimatvam. The jiva has alpagyaha, meaning limited in knowledge, and alpashaktiman, meaning limited in skill. And then the jiva is also a karta and bhokta. The jiva acts in this world. And his action produces punya and papa. He is governed by the laws of the universe. He is governed by the laws, the law of karma. And he is also a bhokta, because then he experiences the results of his past actions. So, alpa shaktiman, alpagyaha, karta, bhokta, jivatma. Now, what about this Paramatma? He said Brahma Pratibimba in the Prapanchatrayam. This Paramatma is this intelligence behind the entire creation. The consciousness pervading this entire creation. The intelligent cause behind the entire world. So patasya karta patagnaha. Ghatasya karta ghatagnaha. He is sarvasya karta. He is the one, from him this entire world has emerged. And therefore, he is sarvagnaha. He knows everything in totality. He's got all knowledge. And Ishvara doesn't take the help of any other entity for the manifestation of this world, like the architect takes help from the mason takes help from the architect. The entire world emerges out of Ishvara and Ishvara alone. From Maya, endowed with this reflection of consciousness, emerges this entire world. So he is the intelligent cause behind the entire world. Therefore, Ishvara is Sarva Shaktiman, also all powerful, because Ishvara doesn't need anybody's help for the manifestation of this entire world. And unlike this Jiva, who is this Karta and Bhokta, Jiva is just the Karta Bhokta and doesn't determine the results of the actions. He is a Karma Hetuhu, not the Karma Phala Hetuhu. Like we said, the Jiva can take an arrow and then aim at a target and take all the precautions and release the arrow. He can do that much. But whether the arrow really hits the target or not is not in his hands. It's Alpashaktiman, Alpagyaha and Alpashaktiman. He may make mistakes while shooting also, Alpagyaha. And he doesn't have any control of what the arrow is going to hit, Alpashaktiman. So what is the karma phala hetu then? What is the cause of the karma phala? As we said, once the jiva has released his action into the universe, the laws of the universe take over. And the laws of the universe process the action and produce the results. There are physical laws, chemical laws, biological laws, so many laws, a network of laws is involved, and there is also the law of karma. Now, where did these laws come from? The laws are a part of the manifestation. Where did the manifestation come from? From Ishvara, this Maya backed by Brahman. This entire manifestation has emerged. These laws have also emerged from the unmanifest. They have just become manifest. They were always there in an unmanifest form. They have become manifest. So the laws have emerged from Ishvara. I am not the author of these laws. They are, Ishvara can be said to be the author of these laws. And the laws, the network of laws determine the results of my actions. Therefore, Ishvara is the karma phala data. The laws determine results of my actions, and the laws have emerged from Ishvara. The laws are authored by Ishvara. Therefore, Ishvara is my karma phala data. So I am the Karta Bhokta, gaining Punya and Papa as a Jiva. Ishvara is the Karma Phaladata, giving the results of the Punya and Papa of the Jiva. So as we see, Alpagyaha, Alpashaktiman, Karta Bhokta, mortal, limited Jivatma. On the other hand, you have Sarva Shaktiman, Sarvagyaha, Karma Phaladata, all-pervading Paramatma. So this Jivatma, we say, has got these inferior qualities. The Paramatma has got these superior qualities. And the reason why this Jivatma has got these inferior qualities is because of the reflecting medium. The Shariratrayam is limited. The reason why Paramatma, the Brahma Pratibimba and the Prapanchatrayam has got these superior qualities is because the Prapanchatrayam doesn't have these limitations that the Shariratrayam has. But we say that both of these reflections are a distorted version of the original. The reflection in the Shariratrayam is a distortion because it is mixed up with the inferior attributes of the reflecting media of the Shariratrayam. The reflection in the Prapanchatrayam is a distortion because it is mixed up with the superior attributes of the Prapanchatrayam. The original consciousness is neither inferior nor superior. An analogy here is that I'm standing in front of two mirrors. And one is a convex mirror, the other is a concave mirror. Now, if I look in the convex mirror, the reflection will appear to be somewhat small. In the concave mirror, like the shaving mirror, etc., if you look at it, the face appears very large. Now, the original face doesn't have this smallness. The original face doesn't have this magnification either. So these distortions don't belong to the original face. The Jivatma has got these inferior attributes. The Paramatma has got these superior attributes. The original has got no attributes. Because Brahman is attributeless consciousness. So now the question is, are these reflections that we are calling the Jiva and this Ishvara, Jivatma and Paramatma, are they same or are they different? If we look at it from the standpoint of the reflecting medium, then they are different. The Paramatma has got these superior qualities, the Jivatma has got these inferior qualities. But the difference is a distortion that is caused by the medium, just as these distorted reflections that we saw in the two mirrors. The original face doesn't have any of those distortions. So if my face looks distorted in a mirror, then I'm not particularly worried. If I know it's a distortion. If I don't know it's a distortion, that's an entirely different problem. That is what we are going to talk about. If I know it's a distortion, there is no need for me to worry. Why? Because it's a distortion, it's not the original. I don't attribute what I see in the distortion to myself. And if I see these two mirrors side by side, I know that none of these distortions belong to the original. In fact, I know the original is one that is free of these two distortions. So similarly, the difference between this Jivatma and Paramatma, we say, is incidental and not essential. We can say that the reflections are incidental to me because they are really they are distorted based on the reflecting media. They are not in any way connected to the original. They are not essentially there in the original. They are incidental but not essential. Similarly, the difference between the Jivatma and Paramatma, the difference in these reflections is incidental. It is not there essentially in the original. So if you remove the distorting medium, then what is left is just like this original phase is left, this one Atma is left. The Brahman alone is left that has neither the distortion of the Jivatma nor this magnification of the Paramatma. So just as one phase alone appears as these two reflections, it is one Brahman alone that appears both as the Jivatma and the Paramatma. So if we go back to what Tattvabodha says here, स्थूल शरीराभिमानी जीवनामकं ब्रह्म प्रतिबिंबं भवति स एव जीवः. So Brahma Pratibimbam Bhavati, this Jivatma is this reflection of consciousness, all-pervading consciousness, Brahman in the Shariratrayam. Brahma Pratibimbam Bhavati. And it is given the name Jiva, Jiva Namakam. And now comes the portion about the distortion. It is Sthula Sharira Bhimani. So first of all, he says he says it's a reflection in the Sthula Sharira. But we can extend it to the Sukshma and Karana Sharira also. Really speaking, Jiva is not limited to the Sthula Sharira. When the Sthula Sharira goes also, the Jivatma is there. As we saw, even during Pralayam, the Jiva exists as the Karana Sharira. So, even during Pralayam, this reflection in the Karana Sharira is there. Karana Sharira is pervaded by Brahman. The Jivatma is there even during Pralayam. This reflection in the Karana Sharira alone gets extended when it evolves into the Sukshma Sharira, and this reflection in the Sukshma Sharira is then lent to the Sthula Sharira. So at the most fundamental level, it is Karana Sharira Pratibimbam that we call Jiva. But then this reflection is Sthula Sharira Bhimani. So as we said, the reflection depends upon the reflecting media. And therefore, this reflection in the Jiva's Shariratrayam is both dirty and distorted. First question is, why is it sullied? Why is it dirtied? Because it is ignorant. There is ignorance in the reflecting medium. The Karana Sharira is ignorance. Satsvarupa Jnanam. Anadya Vidya, Anadya Vidya Rupam. So this Karana Shariram is of the nature of self-ignorance. And therefore, it inherits this property of the reflecting media, which is ignorance. So this reflection of this Brahman as this Jivatma in the Sharira Trayam, it carries over this primordial ignorance of oneself. So what is the cause of this? What is the ignorance is the cause? What is its effect? The effect is that the reflection doesn't know that its original nature is this OC. The RC doesn't know I am really the OC. The RC doesn't know, this reflected consciousness doesn't know that I am really this original consciousness that is all pervading. Just as this person who is looking in the mirror, he sees a distortion in the mirror. He doesn't know the distortion is not the original. He takes the distortion to be the original. He takes the reflection to be the original. Here, this reflected consciousness, the jiva that is ignorant because of the reflecting medium, then takes this reflection to be the original. The most fundamental mistake. And then what happens? We said his reflection is sullied and distorted. It is dirty and distorted. We saw why it is dirty. It is because of the self-ignorance. And why is it distorted? Because when the rope is not seen as a rope, it is mistaken for a snake. When the RC is not known as the OC, then the RC is invariably mixed up with the other things. The RC gets mixed up with the RM. Just as there is a red hot iron ball. We call one thing, it's a red hot iron ball. Really speaking, it gets all mixed up in my vision. The heat doesn't belong to the iron ball. And the shape of the iron ball, the roundness doesn't belong to the fire. The heat really belongs to the fire, and the roundness of the iron ball belongs to the iron ball, but they get mixed up. The RC is really the OC. But in the absence of this knowledge, the RC gets mixed up with the attributes of the RM. Therefore, this RC begins to say, I am this body. I am this mind. So there is this mix up, this is a separate type of oneness that results from ignorance. A oneness with the reflecting media. And then he says, I am limited to this Shariratrayam. I am mortal because I will die when this body dies. I am Alpagyaha. I only have limited knowledge. I am Alpashaktiman. I can only do this much. I cannot do more than this. The most fundamental cause here is the ignorance, the ajnanam. The ajnanam results in the superimposition. The RC doesn't know I am the OC, so the RC invariably mistakes it to be the RM. Becomes one with the RM. Mistakes the attributes of the RM to be my attributes. Mistakes the mortality that belongs to the body as belonging to me. Mistakes these gunas, virtues or vices of the mind as belonging to me. Therefore, this adhyasa is there. All of this is superimposed upon this I. The I that is not known as the original. Then there is all this superimposition. Ajnanam results in adhyasa. And then what happens? Apurnatvam. This is what we started off this entire series of classes with. In the very first class, we talked about how this jiva feels apurna. It's all a result of this mix-up. And then apurnatvam invariably results in this samsara. We will talk about that part. So this is the jiva, the limited, mortal, samsari jiva. So he says, Prakritya swasmad ishwaram bhinnatvena janati. So he uses the word Prakritya. Prakriti refers to Maya, this Mula Vidya. This fundamental ignorance of my nature of being this original consciousness. So Prakritiya, because of this Mula Vidyaya. Swasmad Ishwaram Bhinnatvena Janati, this reflected consciousness has done this terrible mix-up and associated itself with this Thula and Sukshma Sharira. And saying that I am this body-mind, I am only this much. And therefore, naturally, this then looks at the Paramatma and looks at the superior attributes of Paramatma. And he says, I am Alpagyaha, I am Alpashaktiman, Paramatma is Sarvagyaha, Sarvashaktiman. But he doesn't know that this Paramatma's real nature, he doesn't know the real nature of Paramatma also. as being the OC. Because even this reflecting media, as we say, before this creation was there, there was no manifest reflecting media for this reflection to manifest. So even this Brahma Pratibimbam was not there in a manifest form before this creation. It was there in the Karana Avastha, all right. But this reflection also comes and goes based on the coming and going of the world. So this Brahma Pratibimba is not the real nature of Paramatma also. If I give reality to this Brahma Pratibimba because of the ignorance of the real nature of Paramatma, then I am taking that distortion also to be the reality. Then I am comparing these two distorted reflections and I am saying this Jivatma is different from the Paramatma. Swasmat Ishwaram Bhinnatvena Janate. So as long as I see these two distorted images, so imagine somebody who has been there all his life stranded on some island, never looked at his own real face. All he has available are these distorted mirrors. And every time he looks into it, he sees these distorted faces. He takes them to be the reality because he has not known himself. So this Jivatma takes these distorted images of himself and Ishvara to be the reality. Swasmad Ishwaram Bhinnatvena Janate. But then Tattvabodha points out, Avidyopadhis san Atma Jiva ityuchyate, Mayopadhis san Ishvara ityuchyate. So it introduces this word called Upadhi. And what does it mean? This word called Upadhi. It's an important word in Vedanta. And Upadhi is something that differentiates one thing from another thing. So there are two types of differentiators that Vedanta talks about. One is called a Visheshanam and another is an Upadhi, an attribute versus an adjunct. If we take the example of a blue pot, then the blueness of the pot is an attribute of the pot. It distinguishes the pot, it differentiates the pot from other pots. But the blueness has affected the pot. The blueness is an attribute of the pot. And it differentiates the pot from other pots. But then there are certain types of differentiators where the differentiator doesn't affect what it is differentiating. Like we talk about this pot space. When we talk about the pot space, then the pot doesn't really affect the space. The pot is Prithvi Tattvam, it cannot affect Akasha. Coming and the going of the pot has absolutely zero effect on Akasha. But it seemingly encloses Akasha. So, when we talk about pot space, the pot differentiates a certain Akasha from the total Akasha, but the pot really doesn't affect the Akasha inherently in any way. So, this is an Upadhi. So here he talks about avidyopadhisan atma jiva ityuchyate. That this atma is this reflection in the micro medium. This karana sukshma sthula shariras, shariratrayam. But this doesn't really affect the Atma. I can talk about Jivatma versus Paramatma, taking the Shariratrayam and the Prapanchatrayam as the reflecting media. But what it is saying is that this is an Upadhi. It has not really affected the Atma, just as the pot space. The pot, the creation of the pot hasn't really affected space in any fundamental way. Similarly, this Sharira Trayam is there. And based on that, I can talk about Jivatma being different from Paramatma. But the Sharira Trayam hasn't fundamentally affected the Atma, the original, in any way whatsoever. So similarly, Mayopadhis san Ishvara ityuchyate. It is based on the Maya Upadhi. The Karana Prapancha and the Sukshma Prapancha and the Sthula Prapancha, based on the Pratibimba and that, I can talk about Ishvara being different from the Jiva. But then this is again an Upadhi. Maya is an Upadhi of Atma. It hasn't affected Atma in any fundamental way whatsoever. So since both are Upadhis, there is no real change in the Atma. Superficially, there is a difference, but essentially, there is no difference. There is essential oneness. In fact, there is only one entity, really speaking, that appears as two. And therefore, he says, Evam upadhi bhedat jiveshvara bheda drishtihi yavat paryantam tishtati tavat paryantam janma maranadi rupa samsaro na nivartate. He says that Evam upadhi bhedat. Because of this upadhi, there is a difference, all right. But that difference is a seeming difference. There is a difference in the two reflections because of the reflecting media, no doubt. But that difference is only a seeming difference. One who takes it to be a real difference. Evam upadhi bhedat jiveshvara bheda drishtihi yavat paryantam tishtati. As long as one takes the differences in the reflections to be the reality, as long as one takes this difference as a result of this upadhi to be the reality, tavat paryantam janma maranadi rupa samsaro na nivartate. This samsara, this struggle will not end. Why? Because I have taken this RC to be the original. I have taken the distortion to be the reality. And this RM and RC are limited. Asti jayate vardhate viparinamate apakshiyate vinashyati. This happens with the RC, RM. Therefore, it happens with the RC also. So there is always insecurity and fear when one is associated with this Sthula Sharira. And therefore, there will be apurnatvam. Apurnatvam is an essential consequence of this mistake. And as long as there is apurnatvam, there will be this seeking for purnatvam. And therefore, one will get into this struggle, this seeking for the lasting fulfillment. Through arthaha, through kamaha, through dharmaha. And we defined samsara as an endless struggle for everlasting fulfillment through the first three purusharthas. One gets into this business of seeking fulfillment. And one never gets that fulfillment. Why? Because one has fundamentally associated oneself with Atma that is constantly changing, perishing. Tavat paryantam janma mananadi rupa samsaro na nivartate. So as long as one is associated, as long as this ignorance is there, as long as one is taking the reflection to be this original, as long as one is taking this distortion to be the original, then this apurnatvam is a necessary consequence of it, and samsara is a necessary consequence of it. Tavat paryantam janma maranadi rupa samsaro na nivartate. Samsara will not go. The struggle will never end. Tasmat karanat na jiveshwarayor bheda buddhi svikarya. And therefore, one has to gain this knowledge and see that Jiva and Ishvara are not separate. There is this one reality that appears as two. Just like this wave and ocean are there. As long as the wave sees the ocean to be something different, there will be this constant struggle. It'll say, I am mortal, I am limited, I'm going to crash to the shores one day. But the day the wave recognizes that I am this water, the water is the reality, the one reality behind the name and form of the wave and behind the name and form of the ocean. When it recognizes this one reality, then all of its samsara, its suffering comes to an end. Therefore, I have to come to this understanding that I am this OC. The RC that I take myself to be is nothing but this OC. I have to shift my vision from the RC to the OC. This is what we said. The entire Vedantic sadhana is shifting my vision from the limited I to this limitless I. And in that understanding lies my Purnatvam. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om